Shabbat Shalom. So they are called the beneficiaries. We quickly understood why. It's a more dignified term than refugee. It's an appropriate name because by definition, they receive assistance. Property that originally belonged to someone else. Donated clothes and peanuts, coffee, tea and toys and rice. These were some of the basic supplies that the Nashville team of 7 prepared for giveaway at the JCC in Krakow, Poland. The beneficiaries are, for the most part, not Jewish, yet they stand in line in the Jewish quarter of a city, anxious to receive these free supplies. In a country that saw its Jewish population decimated by the Nazis. The beneficiaries are, for the most part, largely traumatized by having to leave their homes, and most of them their husbands, and their first world lives in Ukraine. These are not the type of immigrants that we see pictures of here in the States, that we encounter. Most of them were quite wealthy. I mean, who do you think gets out first? And yet their lives have been uprooted by war. And their children are confused, and they just want to play. And their stories are harrowing. This is Diana. She's about as unhappy as she kind of looks. She's in a foreign country. She hasn't seen her father in a long time. Her mother is driving her crazy. She does not speak English, and yet I determined all of this really just based on her body language, my interactions with her. It took a while, but your rabbi got her to smile. I taught her how to play dots, a simple game I used to play with my children on a napkin when they were young, and the food at the restaurant was just taking too long. My children needed to be entertained and comforted and coddled if and when we ordered food that took an extra 10 minutes. And Deanna has required comforting really for months now. She gets that comforting by a strong mother and by contemporaries, other kids who are hurting, and by professional therapists. She made me something out of paper. It melted my heart. Her mother and I are now Facebook friends. Yeah, even though we don't speak the same language. Diana is one of the several children at the Pazkołaka Palace. It's located outside the city of Krakow. The palace has been transformed into a home for several of the beneficiaries. It was supposed to close in July, and then the plan was they were going to close by September, and they're currently planning on being open beyond the first of the year. Here again, the beneficiaries, Diana included, are not Jewish. And it's important to mention because part of what drives the employees of the Krakow JCC is history. When they came for the Jews of Poland in 1939, no one did anything. So it was not an option to do nothing for others in 2022. The Jews, our partners, we can't do everything, but they wouldn't do nothing. They couldn't do nothing. So the Jewish community of Poland felt compelled to do something to help benefit the now 2 million plus people who have made their way from the Ukraine to Poland. What about the Jewish ones? To answer that question, I must back up. We flew first to Warsaw. Our team included MICA members Larry and Carol Hyatt, who are with us this evening, West End member Ned Jacobson. Oh, just clap for them. They're sitting right over there. Federation Communications Director Barbara Dabb, Temple members Denise Alper and Haley Levy. And our mission included spending time there witnessing what the Jewish Agency is doing. I know we value humility here at Micah, but almost nothing made me prouder to be a Jew. Our first stop was a hotel, not our hotel. Yeah. At first, we were confused. When we arrived, there were like several individuals with those like earpieces, like the Mossad, those folks you see working security, right? Because the hotel is serving as temporary housing unit for the thousands of beneficiaries who are in the process of making Aliyah, of moving to Israel. We heard actual war stories, and people who fought tears, and some who did not, describing how they fled Mariupol by car or Kiev by train, escaping death, leaving behind their lives. There are many who do not ever plan to travel to the Ukraine again. And as opposed to what happened during the Shoah, the Holocaust, we, the Jewish community, now has a powerful worldwide network and a place to get to. A way to get our people out and safely to a land known as Israel. If it only had existed then. Yeah. This woman is explaining her personal journey to Poland from the Ukraine and how she came to work for the Jewish Agency really by accident. During our time at this temporary housing center, we also met a man who pretty much is in charge of immigration there in Ukraine for all of Israel. You want to talk power. Sitting in this makeshift office in a hotel in Warsaw, he decides the fate of thousands of people. He could have been a member of Micah, and here's why. He wants to help people, all people. Now, his job requires that those wishing to immigrate to Israel provide any shred of evidence that they have Jewish blood in any direction, even a distant grandparent. You don't have to be, empathic to sense the fear in these interview rooms. Our goal was to get to Krakow, but we spent some time in the Jewish Museum in Warsaw. We borrowed witness to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, visiting this wall. It was not hard to imagine, and yet still very difficult, what happened behind it, the pain and the strength and the resilience of those who walked that very same earth decades before us. Unbeknownst to my fellow travelers, I had arranged a meeting with Marta Kubica. Marta works for ELNET, the European Leadership Network. It's an organization that makes connections between European governments and the State of Israel, conceived of and chaired by Micah member Larry Hochberg, who also happens to be my father-in-law. ELNET works in several European countries. And Marta was able to answer several questions, not just about the refugee crisis, but really about the politics of Poland. It is as difficult to get an abortion there as it is now here. CBD, however, is legal and available for distribution in kiosks. We awoke the next morning and took the train to Krakow. A strange feeling encompassed me as we boarded a train in Poland. Most, if not all, the buildings in Warsaw are new because the Nazis leveled the place. Krakow, however, was preserved as it served the Germans' purpose. The Krakow Jewish Community Center could probably fit in this room, packed with employees and fellow volunteers and beneficiaries. The place is tired and yet beautiful. It is vibrant and yet very sad. And we spent a few hours packing supplies, along with a few other Americans and Israelis, a Russian, people just traveling through, wanting to help. and we gave them that Nashville Federation check for $17,000 in donations. The work that we did for just a few hours on just a few days has been ongoing for months. By chance, we spoke with the director, Jonathan Orenstein. He had been away and was just back from the States, speaking to Jewish communities here, raising awareness and money. Helping beneficiaries is not part of the Krakow JCC mission statement, but it is part of a Jews' mission on earth. A New Yorker by birth with Israeli citizenship, Jonathan was actually quite critical of the work of the Jewish Agency. Don't you think if those people really had wanted to make Aliyah to Israel, they would have done it before the war, he said? Revealing the layers of complexity around the matzav, the situation. On the Sabbath, a few of us made the sacred pilgrimage to Auschwitz and Birkenau. Our tour guide, a young woman who had grown up in the city of Auschwitz, probably not far from the McDonald's there, told us that she felt compelled to do the work that she does because of where she grew up. And with a sincere and gentle knowledge, this non-Jewish woman, probably not 30 years old, guided us through the barracks and all the way into the gas chambers. And these theological thoughts were like racing through my mind. Words written by scholars I have studied for decades now. Eliezer Berkovitz, just keep your Christian hands off our Jewish babies. Or Richard Rubinstein, why did God save us in Egypt, but not in Europe? Emil Fackenheim, we now have a 614th commandment. We must not grant Hitler a posthumous victory. I comforted myself with the words of Roger Gottlieb. I do no real justice to the 6 million if I do not delight in the singing of Jewish songs by children. And I thought of Cantor Goldberg and Rabbi Lori and our education director, Julie Greenberg, and how they would be leading such songs at Micah only hours later on the first day of J-Lab, our religious school. Concentrate, isolate, exterminate. That was the Nazis' plan, and it worked. So now the Jewish community is concentrating. It's concentrating its efforts on how best to help, even if we disagree on what the best course of action might be. It's taking the vulnerable, young women like Deanna and her mother, and isolating them from the pain. It is exterminating. It's eliminating the danger, and it's addressing the grief. Because we may not be able to do everything, but we refuse to do nothing. So we did what we could. We played with children, and I sat on the floor of an ancient castle only kilometers away from death camps, wondering why my government didn't drop a bomb on those train tracks from a plane as I showed a small group of children how to make paper airplanes. Because they are just children, and they deserve to have a childhood, something that was denied our predecessor in those camps. The truth be told, we were the beneficiaries. Not because my father was a wandering Aramaean who fled Egypt. We were not refugees. We were tourists. But we were blessed to be benefited from spending a few days in a very difficult and very beautiful place with Jewish and non-Jewish volunteers all looking to help, with people who are struggling, with vulnerable souls, and with Deanna. Shabbat Shalom.